Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Safety Systems. So many national companies promise you the moon when it comes to security systems for your home or office. But when you do the comparison, the contracts, what's provided, the cost, the quality, none of the national groups can come anywhere close to what the local guys, Safety Systems, can do for you and for your business. Whether it's your home or your office, call VFL JJ Surlis and his team this week about their security systems, their life safety systems, the tests that they do on the fire safety systems and stuff that they provide. They handle all that for you once you go with them. SafeTsystems.com. Okay, as I said, the college sports landscape is absolutely quaking right now. And I know not everyone's following. I just want to talk about the games. This is going to impact games, and you're going to wind up 3 months from now saying, where did this come from? So let's discuss it now, but from a Tennessee standpoint. So let me give you a quick rundown of just all the news that came out this week involving things that will trickle back here to Knoxville. Let's go ahead and put this up. First, word came out this week that the NCAA Transformation Committee, that's the group tasked with coming up with a new plan for the NCAA, well, they're not going to be able to meet their August 1st deadline because too much is up in the air right now. I don't think that's a good sign that the idea is everyone hates the NCAA. We're going to come up with a new plan for the NCAA, and it's too big of an ask for them to actually do it on schedule. Two, schools are now pushing for guidelines that they want the NCAA to start enforcing regarding NIL. In other words, some guys are having more success with the NIL stuff, so the guys who aren't having as much success are asking for guidelines, and they're asking for punishments. A poll this week showed that 73% of athletic directors who were surveyed consider themselves extremely concerned about NIL, and many of them are worried about the possibility of bigger major scandals coming because of NIL. Three, the NCAA still doesn't want to enforce the NIL stuff, and they're not, because they don't have the time or manpower to do it if they want to. We'll discuss that later. So the commissioners of the Pac-12 and the SEC Greg Sankey, both went to D.C. this week to lobby members of Congress to create federal regulation, federal guidelines for all this stuff. Meanwhile, the Pac-12 commissioner said if the NCAA doesn't start enforcing NIL guidelines, the schools may have to come up with their own solution. And Ohio State AD Gene Smith, maybe the most powerful AD in the country, said it may be time for the big football schools to just let the college football playoff run them, while all the other sports stick with whatever the NCAA becomes. That's the first time real power brokers that I can remember have ever seriously said that, talked about breaking away from the NCAA and attached their name to it. It's not sources say, it's the Ohio State AD and the Pac-12 commissioner talking about that kind of stuff. All that happening. I've always thought the big schools, they can talk, it's just too much of an ask to break away from the NCAA. I'm now looking at what you're seeing this week. Some schools can play this way. Some schools are not going to be able to afford to play this way. The Boise States, the West Virginias, the Cincinnati, they can't keep up with this kind of money. I don't see them all banding together. And once you get guys like Ohio State, who's a pretty doggone important AD in the nation, he may be the most well-known, you guys like that talking about, yeah, we may need to just let the college football playoff run this. Okay, I'm now in. I think we are heading in the direction where college football, for better or worse, won't be under the NCAA and whatever it becomes. It will be under the college football playoff or something else. I haven't bought into that until now, but the way they're talking and the way this thing is shifting everywhere, I think Tennessee and the SEC could be in one group and the rest of college football gets shoved somewhere else under some other group. Anybody else here starting to feel that way, or am I just overreacting? Some of you may have felt that's coming all along before I did. So
is this Power 5 only breakaway? Or you?
Well, I don't even know that it would be the whole Power 5, to be honest with you. I don't know that. Cincinnati was in the college football playoff last year. I don't think they or Houston or UCF have the kind of money to throw around with the Alabamas and Texas. But I could say whatever. I mean, just do you see some sort of split coming or no? Do you think they all somehow figure out a way to stay together?
I think that they are going to remain under the NCAA umbrella with more autonomy. Because I don't think they want to completely, you still have to have some type of governing body, right? So I think they're going to break away and have more autonomy than what they have. And then when you go to basketball, you got, 340 teams? That would be hard for basketball to break away. So I think they'll stay under the NCAA just with more rights to what they want to do instead of being told by other smaller schools what they have to do.
The problem is that was what everyone thought the transformation committee was going to do by August.
Right.
Because the NIL has everything up in arms. They're just kind of stalled out right now. And you have the Greg Sankey, who's the head of that transformation committee, one of the two. He's one of the guys now going to Washington to say, we need federal aid. You take it over. Does anybody think this is going to split or no? Am I on an island by myself?
It's a complicated issue. I mean, we talked about this on the show. I think it was very much laid bare during the pandemic when it was at its height that the NCAA is offering no help at the top level. And I think it's also important to note that the NCAA is, while it is an organization, the schools control what happens.
Right.
And I think that Jimmy's right, that autonomy is sort of the goal there. They want to be able to, obviously there's real reform needed here. And so when you're writing up a new rule book, a lot of schools, there's a lot of momentum to say, we don't need the NCAA, we want our own thing, whatever that means, because the NCAA is not helping the leadership there in Indianapolis, is not helping them literally do anything. They're a purposeless organization right now, and that, I think, is laid bare by a lot of the commissioners of the leagues who are motivated to say, when we need real change and real reform, what is the purpose of the NCAA? It's us. It's the commissioners and the ADs in the league that have to figure out what's going on.
But how do you make that work when you've got Alabama and Bellarmine doing those are two completely different schools with two completely different needs, and yet
Different worlds,
they each have a say in how the other one operates. Josh, do you think it's coming to a split or no?
Someday, yeah. I think there's a very good chance. I've thought that could be the case long term, but long term, what is that, 2040? You know, that
Right.
still it's getting closer, I guess. But maybe the NCAA is the title of what you're doing, but it's just a completely different world. So that can come back to more autonomy for the schools that still make it up. But the idea of you go to the NCAA, like you think about the enforcement committee and the when rules are broken, you have your committee on infractions come in. That conversation goes away, and you have a different set of leaders, and maybe that comes back to conference commissioners, university presidents, that they're more in charge of whatever that is, whatever's decided there, because you can't trust the NCAA.
Vince Gene Smith says, look, the guys that put 85 scholarships out there and play football at the highest level, we may need to just go do our own thing under the college football playoff. We'll keep everything else under the NCAA banner, but this is separating. Do you think we're heading toward that world or no?
Well, I think some of it could very well be a threat because, as you mentioned, John, it was tossed around without anybody's name behind it. Now that this is being addressed, and you read the quotes from Gene Smith talking about all these things in the NIL, he's talking about, hey, we can't do it the way we used to. I mean, it's like, sometimes it takes years for them to address situations. We need it done in 90 days, and we can't do it like we did it before. I mean, some of those quotes are really significant. So I think some of that is a threat, but they're also thinking about it. I'm with Josh. I thought that at some point down the road, it was Power 5, they're going to break up, do the super conference thing. But now, for different reasons, I do think eventually we will get there if the NCAA doesn't have an answer. And you wonder, without any teeth, without staff to address all these things, how are they going to give these schools what they want?
Yeah, we'll get into that a little later, too. Yeah. Next, VFL Marlon Walls is going to join us because this is a guy, and I'm going to do it now instead of in his intro. This is a guy who played at Tennessee, obviously. He would have enjoyed some NIL dollars in his day. He was also a high school football coach. He's seen kids get recruited. He's seen the other side of this thing. Let's get his take. It's a different perspective than the rest of it. Let's get his take on NIL, the good, the bad, even some of the stories that came out this week about players who are saying, pay me or I'm leaving. What is the reaction inside a locker room to that? What if that happens at Tennessee? What if somebody comes to, say, Nico, your $8 million quarterback, and says, we'll give you $10 million? How binding is that contract? We'll discuss a lot of stuff with Marlon Walls next. Come on back.